Hi.
Hello.
So, thank you for talking with me today.
My pleasure.
Tell us about yourself and what you do.
Well, first I would say, hey, kulamosi hutch, dalawense, lepo katatam ni Lenape, Shawnee Wapoli. Hello, how are you? My name is Jeremy Johnson. I am Lenape, Shawnee, and Peoria. So
Great.
I am the Cultural Education Director here at the Delaware Tribe of Indians based in Bartlesville, Oklahoma.
All right. Can you give us a very brief overview of Delaware tribe history?
Yeah, our original homelands, what we call Lenape Hoking, encompasses all of New Jersey, eastern Pennsylvania, southern New York, and northern Delaware. We resided in that area for over 16,000 years until we had our first contact with Europeans in 1524 with Verrazano in the Hudson River Valley. And then after that, our most extended contact at that point, was with the Dutch in the 1600s. Long history there, long fraught history with colonization. Um, so after years, we welcomed the Dutch. After years of kind of some betrayals with the sale of the quote unquote sale of Manhattan Island to the Dutch to Peter Minuit, being forced into New Jersey after the walking purchase of 1737 with William Penn. We had a long trek to where we are now. None of our treaties have ever been upheld. So we've been cheated out of land. The walking purchase, it was millions of acres taken from us in an agreement that was disputed and then, of course, upheld by the powers that be at that time against the Lenape. So from about the mid 1700s, actually early 1700s, we were pretty much started being forced out of our homelands. Began our westward trek, moving first into western Pennsylvania around the Fort Pitt area. After the siding with the French in the French and Indian War, we did sign a treaty with the United States. We were the first sovereign indigenous nation to sign a treaty with the fledgling United States in 1778 because we did help to battle the British. We helped the Continental Army. We actually had the first commissioned Native American officer in the Continental Army. He went by the name Captain White Eyes, but he actually reached the rank of a colonel in the Continental Army. He's the one who also negotiated the 1778 Fort Pitt Treaty, and that allowed the Continental Army free passage through Lenape lands at that point to Detroit so that they could start to address what they called Pontiac's Rebellion. That treaty promised the Delaware, or what became known as the Delaware for 1750s, because of where we had lived. We were displaced from there, so people started calling us the Delaware Indians because we were the Indians who lived on the Delaware River. We've always called ourselves Lenape. Lenape is our name for ourselves. Delaware is the name that was given to us, and we just negotiated under that name, so we still maintain that name. But that treaty with the Delaware was signed in 1778. We were promised a 14th colony, which we were going to be the heads of, hence Indiana. And we were promised two representatives in Congress, and that never came to fruition. We were told that Congress never ratified it, and 6 months after it was signed, Captain White Eyes was murdered by a fellow soldier. So that caused a lot of tension between us and the Continental Army. So we basically started fighting against the Continental Army from that point on. We had multiple treaties from that point where we were forced westward through Ohio. And at that point, we started to split, and we had different groups go north to seek solace and refuge with the Oneida Nations. And those were our Munsee speaking relatives. They went north, and we continued westward. And in about Missouri, after all this time, in about the early 1800s, we had another group split off of us and head south into Spanish Mexico. They became Delaware Nation, which are now housed in Anadarko, or based in Anadarko, Oklahoma. We continued into Kansas, settled there for 30 years, were forced out again after the Civil War, and ended up in this area here in what is the Cherokee Nation, in the area of Bartlesville, Dewey, Copan, Nowata, and we have been here ever since about 1867. So our original homeland, starting out, Lenape Hoking, New Jersey, eastern Pennsylvania, southern New York, and Delaware.
All right. Why were the Lenape moved to the Cherokee Nation?
That's a kind of complicated question. One of the things that happened was we were promised that reservation around where the Kansas River and the Missouri River meet, which is where now Kansas City is, and it's some of the most pristine farmlands in the United States. Our agreement with the Union armies to protect and keep settlers out, protect us and to keep settlers out, was never upheld because of the influx of settlers. They kept encroaching upon our lands, and finally we were told then you need to move. And so we negotiated a sale with the Cherokee Nation, and that actually had changed by the time we actually signed it. We contested that, but by the end, we ended up in Cherokee Nation. We thought we were buying land here. Cherokee said, no, you're giving up your tribal citizenship and becoming Cherokee. You got the right to live here, and that had been contested even up until 2006. So, and it's still something of an issue with us in Cherokee Nation, the sense of our sovereignty and their rights to uphold the treaty that they signed with us.
All right. So speaking of the tribe sovereignty, what does the Delaware Tribe government do?
Well, let's talk about sovereignty really quick first. Sovereignty is a political status. It means that we are able to govern ourselves as a nation, much like the 574 federally recognized sovereign indigenous nations of the United States. If you think of it as many countries within our country, that's what sovereignty means for us. We are able to work with other sovereign entities. If we wanted to, we could address, say, the French government or the Swedish government for the things that they've done, and we could address them nation to nation. So as a sovereign nation, what we try to do is we try to govern our people in ways that make sense. We have lots of agreements, though. So we have agreements with the federal government, we have agreements with state and local governments to govern ourselves in certain ways. We're kind of limited by our MOU with the Cherokee Nation, but we still try to provide governmental services for our citizens of our nation, like elder nutrition, some forms of help with health care, educational opportunities, child care, and cultural teachings and learnings and knowledge and preservation of those things.
All right. I just have two more questions, I think.
Okay.
What does the cultural preservation look like?
Cultural preservation, well, we lost a lot on our way here. You know, as you're being forced to move out of someplace, you start losing connections to the land, connections to your language. Whenever you're being forced not to speak your language, you start losing a lot of things, ceremonies, traditions, plant knowledge, knowledge about making like dugout canoes when we're moved away from your waterways and your lifeblood. So what we talk about preservation is, that's just one step. Preservation is obviously preserving what we've managed to maintain, and what we've managed to maintain in traditions, songs, dances, those types of things, and our language, because we don't have any first language speakers anymore. The last one in our community passed away in 2002. So we're preserving that language, but that next step is revitalization. And so we are trying to revitalize that language and offer classes and instruction on how to speak that language. We are also offering classes and instruction on revitalizing some of our traditions and things that people still know about, but we don't practice anymore, or we don't practice as a community. So we're trying to bring those back. And so that is one of our main goals, is not only the preservation, the revitalization and reclamation of our heritage and our culture.
It's great to hear. Then lastly, what is the most important thing you would want people who are not from the tribe to know?
I would say that it's important to know that we have maintained many aspects of our culture and our history and our traditions, and that we still practice those today, that we are not extinct, that we live in a thriving community that are still trying to do the best for our citizens, for our community members, for our relatives, and that we are always evolving. We're not stuck in this romanticized 1800s versions of what a Native American is. And so I think that's important for people to understand. But the most important thing is that we are still here and we are still thriving and practicing our own culture, traditions, religions, and basically living as Lenape people.
All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Hey, Wanishi, thank you.